The hotel was located in one of the resort towns, and although it was a medium-sized hotel, there were plenty of guests, and even in the off-season, most of the rooms were booked. The hotel was managed by Dolan. He was a young man who achieved his position with cunning and flattery in front of the hotel owner, but in reality he was a cruel manager who did not consider his subordinates as human beings. He demanded that the hotel staff do more work than their duties required, and he severely fined those who disagreed. And to detect violations of his own rules, he was helped by particularly close employees who denounced everyone who committed even the most innocuous misconduct. But most importantly, Dolan easily turned the hotel into a source of his own enrichment. He personally controlled the booking process and always saved a few of the best rooms for special clients. These were usually influential people who came to the hotel with their mistresses. They trusted Dolan, who guaranteed their privacy and paid him generously for it. Dolan was not embarrassed by such extra money, as he had long been steeped in vice himself and was willing to turn a blind eye to anything for money. In the past, he had worked for the police and had been fired for bribery, but he did not feel much guilt for his actions. The team Dolan managed consisted of different people, but for the most part, they all shared his boss's position. To please Dolan, they denounced each other while working more and more irresponsibly, mastering all the tricks and ploys to hide the faults of their work. But one day, after another inspection of the hotel, the owner, with whom Dolan had a good rapport, announced the sale of the resort. Gathering all the staff, the head made a sentimental speech and officially announced his leaving. The staff looked at each other frightened, realizing that they would most likely not be able to continue working as they had been under the previous, naive owner, who had been bribed by Dolan's flattery, and now they were afraid not to please the new management and to lose their jobs. "Don't worry," declared Dolan, left alone with his team. "We'll adapt somehow. And now, stop idling around and get to work, everyone." Dolan clapped his hands together, and the employees went back to their duties. From that day on, everyone became extremely cautious, eagerly smiling at the guests on duty, anticipating the sudden appearance of the new owner, but he still hadn't shown up. One evening there was a real storm outside, thunder, lightning, and such a terrible downpour that anyone who was outside in such bad weather risked getting soaked in a second. Suddenly the hotel doors opened and a discreetly dressed young man in a wheelchair entered the lobby. He was breathing heavily because the ramp was inaccessible and he had to climb the stairs. He was helped by a janitor, Larry, who was just finishing his shift. "Good evening," the stranger said to the girls at the reception. "Why is the ramp closed? It's impossible to get inside." The girls, throwing indifferent glances at the guy, tried to think of some cautious excuse, but then a smugly smiling Dolan, who had been watching the guest from the window, appeared in front of them. "The fact is, dear guest, that our hotel is for tourists with an active lifestyle, and they are completely satisfied with our service. If you have difficulty getting around, then contact the Special Social Service, and they will provide you with overnight accommodation. We don't have rooms for you, and we don't give alms, so would you be so kind and stop spreading mud here and leave our hotel?" After these words, he called loudly for one of the maids to hurry up and wipe up the dirty streaks on the floor for fear that any of his privileged guests would slip. Trent, that was the stranger's name, was shocked by this insolence. He could see that the man in front of him was clearly no ordinary employee, but rather a manager, and could not understand how he could behave like this with a potential client. The other employees of the hotel, following Dolan, also began to smirk nastily, showing with all their looks that he was not welcome here. I apologize for the inconvenience, but it's not my fault, and I didn't come for alms. I need a room. Barely containing his indignation, said Trent calmly. There are free rooms only on the 3rd floor, replied Dolan with a sneering grin. Trent realized that he was just being mocked, and once again regretted that he could not get up and leave, or hit the offender to wipe the ugly grin off his face. But the weather outside left him no choice at all. You have no tact or empathy for your customers. I had noticed outside that the lights were off in most of the rooms on the 1st floor, so they are probably vacant. Why don't you offer them to me? You understand that it would be difficult for me to go up to the 3rd floor, don't you? These rooms are booked by our honoured regulars, said Dolan, raising his voice and stopping smiling. Trent felt completely crushed, and tears came to his eyes. He realized that he would not find sympathy among these inhuman people, but there was nowhere for him to go. He gathered all his strength and, breaking into a shout, demanded a room, assuring that he could pay for it. But Dolan, without sympathetic and hesitation, made a sign to the doorman, who literally threw Trent out on the street. Trent could not cope with the injustice that was tearing him apart and burst into tears. He was unable to move in such weather. His smartphone ran out of power, but help came from where Trent was not expecting it. The janitor, Larry, who had helped him to get into the hotel 15 minutes ago, was watching him from the window of his room and could not tolerate such injustice. He quickly put on his cloak, grabbed his umbrella, and, walking up to Trent, opened it over him. The man took the soaked young man to his room, which was in the back of the hotel. There he gave Trent a towel and told him to take off his wet clothes to dry them, and he quickly made tea for Trent. "Thank you very much," uttered Trent, calming down a little, and shook Larry's hand. "You're welcome. Dolan is a mean guy, and I know exactly how you feel right now. I have faced his disgusting, boorish behaviour more than once myself," Larry said, and nodded toward the hotel. While Trent's phone was charging, they got to talking, and Larry told Trent about his life. "I had a wife once, but I wasn't good enough for her. She always reproached me for not being able to provide for my family, even though she never worked a day. And she had a lot more opportunities than I had, because I had a criminal record. Yes, the prison sentence was not long, but it had a big impact on my whole life. Sometimes I regret my actions, but I could not have done it any other way. I was raised to be a man, to protect the weak, not to let women and children be offended. So once I defended a girl and fought on the street, and I was sentenced for that. So now I have to work as a janitor. There are no other jobs for me." "Oh, but I would gladly do any job just to get rid of this wheelchair," said Trent sadly. "But I, just like you, have my limitations." "Yes, it's a pity. You're so young. You have your whole life ahead of you," said Larry sympathetically. "Well, let's hope that both you and I will still get better." So, talking about everything that disturbed them, the men did not notice how morning had come. The rays of the rising sun illuminated the room, and it was clear that the bad weather had receded, and a warm and sunny day lay ahead of them. From the early morning, the hotel was bustling with activity. Some of the guests left for breakfast, while others headed out for a morning walk around the town. Dolan was already at work in his best suit. Everyone was expecting the arrival of the new owner today, who had announced it early in the morning. As soon as the expensive car pulled up at the entrance, the staff, in neat uniforms and with a frozen expression of feigned joy on their faces, lined up in the lobby. The private driver opened the car door, and a solid, grey-haired man got out of it and walked confidently toward the hotel building. "Good morning," exclaimed Dolan immediately, and he hurried to shake the hand of the important guest in person. "Good morning. My name is Mr. Corey. I am the new owner of the hotel, and I am pleased to meet all of you personally. But I want to tell you right away that I am already very disappointed in all of you, and I had expected more from you." There was a bewildered whisper among the hotel staff, and they did not understand what they had already been guilty of in front of the new boss. Seeing the misunderstanding in their eyes, Mr. Corey said that before his arrival he had decided to make an inspection and sent his son to the hotel to check on the quality of the employees' work. The employees began to whisper again, asking each other if any of them had seen anyone suspicious the other day. At that moment, Larry opened the doors, and Trent, in his wheelchair, drove into the lobby under the astonished sighs of everyone present. "Meet Trent, my son. I was shocked when I found out how he was treated." Mr. Corey spoke angrily, and there was an unmistakable threat in his voice. At the same moment, Dolan, realizing that he was responsible for the whole situation, became aware of the precariousness of his position. He threw himself on his knees in front of Trent and began to beg him for mercy. "I'm sorry, I beg you. I didn't mean it. I didn't know what came over me. We have worked for many years for the good of the hotel. Please understand. We were under a lot of stress because of the change in management, and I lost my temper. I'm guilty, I admit it. Please don't fire me." There were also pleas for understanding and mercy among the staff following Dolan, but Mr. Corey saw their falsehoods and could not allow such rude and incompetent employees to work for him. "Stand up immediately and leave this hotel forever," ordered Mr. Corey sharply, and glanced around at everyone present. "And more of you, by the way, will also be fired." After voicing his decision, Mr. Corey turned to Larry, the only man who had come to his son's aid, and offered him the position of hotel manager. "Me? Well, that can't be," said Larry, stunned. "But how is that possible? Don't you know that I was in prison?" "It makes no difference to me. You are honest, fair man, and I trust you, and that's all that matters. Don't worry, I'll send you for training and you'll learn everything." Larry thought for a while and made up his mind, realizing that such a chance in life could not be missed in any way. "I agree, and thank you very much for your trust. I will not let you down." A month later, the hotel reopened its doors. Larry, starting to manage the team, was very nervous, but soon he got used to it, and, as he had promised, he tried his best to have only good reviews about the hotel. After a while, there were changes in Larry's personal life as well. He met one of the guests, and, after a stormy romance, they decided to get married. At the wedding, the main guest was Trent, who was insanely happy for his new friend.